In Europe, only 2 early modern humans with Neanderthal fraction were proven. In Europe, only 2 fossils of early modern humans with the Neanderthal fraction were found and had their DNA sequenced. That was in Aurignacians in central Germany with 13 fossils, and in Betw Cave in Bulgaria with fractions of at least 1 individual, and both cases are dated roughly 47,000 years ago. Those 2 early modern humans were family of each other, this with only a few generations in between them. In the Mandrin Cave site in southern France, at least 1 modern human fossil was found that was proven to have lived 54,000 years ago. Altogether, this obviously is a very low number of modern human fossils, and the 2 of them that had their DNA sequenced and were family are not found amongst any modern humans today, and are considered extinct. So, while extremely interesting, in our opinion there is no significant evidence to conclude that it is proven that the Neanderthal fraction in modern humans today comes from the interbreeding from out of Africans with Neanderthals somewhere out of Africa, this 47,000 or any other time ago. In fact, there is much more evidence this was not the case. For instance, the fact that the most notorious fact, the Aurignacian culture of modern humans 47,000 to 41,000 years ago presents Y-DNA haplogroup C and R1b, as well as significant frequencies of C and R1b, and both these haplogroups have their root provingly in the Americas, and not at all in Africa. Haplogroup R1b has its highest frequencies on the Atlantic and West Mediterranean facades and rivers, and not at all in Africa, or east or around the open land bridge between Africa and Eurasia. The Aurignacian culture had its focus on the stretch from Gibraltar to Marseille and Provence and the part of Europe immediately north of this stretch, and certainly not on the permanent and open land bridge between Africa and Eurasia. The Neanderthal fraction was introduced in modern humans 47,000 years ago. At least a number of renommated scientists consider it as essential for the hypothesis of the Neanderthal fraction in modern humans being caused by interbreeding with Neanderthals, that this Neanderthal fraction was introduced in modern humans around 47,000 years ago, and was the result of a one-time interbreeding of out-of-Africans with just one group of Neanderthals. Nevertheless, facts seem to prove that both parts of what is considered essential by geneticists did not materialize, and this consequently makes that the assumed interbreeding is unable to explain the Neanderthal fraction in modern humans, and nobody seems to really care about this above-mentioned inconsistency or failing to explain. No one seems to have pointed out with which Neanderthal group the out-of-Africans supposedly interbred with. That does not help at all to support out of Africa, nor the assumed interbreeding hypothesis. Back migration is a bit weird. Modern Africans carry Neanderthal DNA that was acquired through migration into Africa of Eurasian populations that already possessed Neanderthal sequences. Consensus calls this back migration, but there is no proof that it really is back migration, and nobody seems to be able or to care about trying to provide it. Migration into Africa, but not migration out of Africa. So we know about the Neanderthal fraction migration and migration in general into Africa, but not of migration out of Africa. That does not help at all to support out of Africa, nor the assumed interbreeding hypothesis. If the Neanderthal fraction was introduced in modern humans 47,000 years ago in the Middle East, Europe or Eurasia as consensus ponders, they could not have reached Germany and Bulgaria already 47,000 years ago, and they certainly could not have reached the Mandrin Cave site in southern France and Western Europe, and certainly not in large numbers. If the Neanderthal fraction was introduced in modern humans 47,000 years ago, the Aurignacian culture, composed of modern humans, could not have arisen in significant part of Europe with a focus away from Eurasia or the Middle East, and instead with focus on Atlantic facades and rivers, this also 47,000 years ago. In any case, the focus of the Aurignacian culture, the Mandrin Cave site in southern France, the Aurignacian Cave in Germany and the Betw Cave in Bulgaria, are all far from Eurasia or the Middle East, and consequently all challenge any out-of-Africa expansion, especially one from far in Asia, but also from Eurasia, the Middle East and even from Africa. And this certainly so if humans at that time did not know how to navigate. Since a culture similar to the Aurignacian culture, also composed of modern humans, appeared in Mongolia roughly around 47,000 years ago, which is the same time as they had arisen in a significant part of Europe, this with a focus away from the Middle East, and instead with the focus on Atlantic facades and rivers, makes them coming from the Middle East, or from anywhere in Eurasia, improbable. Puzzle coming together. Naturally, the Atlantic and Pacific facades and rivers are both fully exposed to eventual oceanic crossings from the Americas. Since the Americas present prehistoric roots of Q, C, and R, with all or some presenting the Neanderthal fraction, including the Neanderthal fraction in even higher percentages than in the rest of the world. In fact, the Americas combined with oceanic navigation on both sides, which is proven to have occurred for over 2 million years, make the puzzle come together. More specifically, A. Neanderthal fraction in Western Europe and Western Eurasia and B. Denisovan fraction in Oceania and Asia, are perfectly explained by out of the Americas expansions, and this certainly not by an out of Africa, or a through the open land bridge between Africa and the Middle East. Last but not least, the puzzle, or rather the whole human history is coming together or in place with the ancestral markers, which exactly are the scientific tools that should have been used and be consulted in the first place, but were not, and that all clearly and securely point out of the Americas. In fact, the ranges of the different Neanderthal groups already by themselves reflect the same two main out of the Americas roots, and the consequent later other modern human expansions. This extremely successful movement across all continents is somehow more easily explained if these Neanderthals were carried and or guided to their destinations by modern humans. This simply so because of the clear need of quite advanced navigation as well as logistics. But nobody seems to even consider this. Consensus and alternative historians alike do not even are open to consider out of Americas, and consequently they stay blind for the true human history and for all the knowledge as well as all solutions that our ancestors provingly successfully put in practice, and that we 8 billion modern humans badly need, this mainly to solve our challenges, to thrive and even to avoid going extinct in a sudden collapse, as those occurred in our history on several occasions, and that we do not understand until today, this in our opinion because we do not consider out of Americas, and consequently not why a so strong and global out of Americas capable of sweeping into the rest of the world and populating it with modern humans, had been possible. We of origin for existence claim that at least in the deep past the cradle was in the Amazon forest and the Amazon Americans thrived based on the by them formed extremely productive carbon agroforests that were naturally fertilized by 2 meters thick, of the by modern scientists recognized and admired Amazon dark earth or AD soils, that the Amazon Americans knew and were able to form. Carbon agroforest with Amazon dark earth soils are true horns of abundance. It was only the Amazon Americans that ever achieved this on a large scale, in fact on a near-continental scale. While the Amazon forest and its soils are highly damaged by now, this by ongoing unsustainable practices, including deforestation for agriculture, dominantly practiced by non-Amazon Americans, it still can make that the Amazon forest and in fact the whole South American continent present significant lower carbon dioxide levels, this compared to the rest of all other continents, and especially when compared with the Northern Hemisphere. Flicker caused by daily carbon dioxide removal and climate regulation. The flickering on your screen, or in the video presented, that is covering all of South America, presents a daily start of build-up of carbon dioxide levels during the night, but also the daily total removal of all the during the night built up. This daily removal is total, this despite the from the Northern Hemisphere, together with the from other continents invading or arriving carbon dioxide. Obviously this daily removal is massive, but despite of this unrecognized. Nobody seems to recognize the flickering, and the massive potential it presents, this despite it being observed and measured with and from satellites, including what you see on your screen. This is not because someone or something removes it, but because the Amazon forest removes it totally on a daily basis, this during the day. The reason that despite this, the carbon dioxide levels still creep up, especially fast in the Northern Hemisphere, but also in the Southern Hemisphere, although with a 1 to over 2 years delay compared to the Northern Hemisphere, is because of proven leakage from the Northern Hemisphere to the Southern Hemisphere, since there is no barrier between the two hemispheres. It is a shame that the general public has no clue of this daily, South America and globally regulating phenomenon, and its relation to sustainable practices of Amazon Americans in the past. If we 8 billion modern humans would repeat today what the Amazon Americans did in the past when they still thrived, in an area of the size of the USA or Europe, but not necessarily in the USA or Europe or limited to them, we would produce enough food to feed us 8 billion modern humans with the most healthy food and produce renewable fuels for all our transport simultaneously. And on top of this regulate our climate globally, all of this simultaneously, and in such a relatively small proposed area. Please comment with your doubts and remarks, as we pretend to complete or to remake this same video, for it to become more useful and or understandable for you and others. We do not pretend to feature good videos, but rather to rewrite parts of history that are improbable at this point. Also ask for more or better illustrations and or proofs, if this would be helpful. Please remember that you should not call yourself an alternative historian or historian, if you do not clarify at least some part of history, or do not add up with a fully scientifically supported history, or with a history without too many paradigms. Like consensus still fails to do so, and most historians, even alternative historians, also fail to do so until now. Criticizing or doubting the historical vision or timelines of others, independent if this is consensus or mainstream or none of both, is not exactly being a historian, or at least not a historian that adds up to history. Thank you.